Hey guys, Matt here, and today I want to bring you guys a video on how to swap over from EK to Spark. So I went ahead and took the the less budget version of the POB, which was for EK, the upgraded version from the second video, and I basically changed the required things to be able to swap over to Spark. In this video, I'll basically be talking over the changes, what we changed, and a little bit about the damage numbers and certain other things, basically. So the first thing that changed is that we are swapping over from a Ring of Blades to an Intuitive Leap here, which saves us 2 points. Now, this is a still fairly budget version, so we are going to be we're not going to be getting 1% mana reserved on it or anything like that, since those are very expensive. Same thing for the Might and Meek. The next change is the Watcher's Eye. We no longer need the Wrath Conversion Watcher's Eye, which is very expensive at the moment. So you could actually go ahead and sell that. And what I would recommend is probably to get a Chaos Resistance while affected by Purity of Elements Watcher's Eye. That one's not too expensive. And it will go a very long way for the feels goodness of the build. Because a lot of people tell me that they're constantly dying to one-shots or whatever on this build. And that is normal, because without this Watcher's Eye, you have like 3 Chaos Resistance. Now, you can get Chaos Resistance on your Cluster Jewels. That's completely fine. But an easy way to get up, like almost Chaos Resistance capped, is to get this Watcher's Eye here. That being said, Spark can use just about any Watcher's Eye because we use plenty of different auras. So we could use some type of damaging aura for Wrath, Zealotry, Hatred, some defense stuff from Discipline or Clarity. It is really up to you what you want to use and what you have the budget for, because the Watcher's Eye range from a few exalts to hundreds and hundreds of exalts. So that is up to you. But for me, I went with a Chaos Resistance Purity of Elements, and that is actually what I used to run at the very beginning of my Spark character. Next thing is that we are going to be using a Hazardous Research. It could be either in this socket or this socket. It'll work. And this basically makes Spark go in a Nova. I did put a 1% mana reserved on this jewel here. It's not insanely expensive, but of course it's something to work towards, if anything else. Now, next we changed a little bit on the clusters. You'll see that some of these clusters were upgraded to 6 passive and 35. Now, I know that these passives, these jewels here, just the base, are like 30 exalts each, so they are not cheap, but we are increasing the value of the build as every video, as every single video I'm making upgrades to the build. So I did upgrade to this. Now, the only reason I upgraded to this is to reach the 4.0 aura effect modifier, because this basically makes all our auras times 5 instead of times 4. It is basically a threshold. And you'll see the big reason why this is really good is our physical damage reduction. If you pay attention to our physical damage reduction at 3.97, it is 76%. If I add a single node that brings us to the 4.0 threshold, our physical damage reduction is 90%. So it is going to be insane for your survivability to be able to reach this 4.0 effect mod threshold in the build. The next thing that I added is a pretty cheap jewel here. It's a 25%, but with Sublime Form. The reason why we go Sublime Form here is basically for the mana reserve. That's the only purpose. As you can see, we are not able to cast Spark without it. And the reason why we go Sublime Form, the reason why we need the mana reserve from Sublime Form is because we are adding another 50% aura in the build compared to the Spark build, which is going to be Malevolence. Now, the build is still level 94, as you'll see in the POB, so it's not a big deal. Now, this didn't really change. I did put it as a 6 with 35 in First Among, but as you can see, we don't even have the levels required to actually get this node, so we don't have to worry about this. This could easily be the same 5 that we were using before. This one didn't change. Still a pure might, still 35, and could be a 5 passives, because we could put this node over here instead, and we would still have the 4.0 threshold. So not a big deal here. This basically didn't change. This is a 35-6, but again, we don't have enough passive points to even get this node. So technically, not mandatory to get a 6 passive. Could be a 5 passives. This one, we have all the nodes in it, and it's a 6, but we could actually, wait, could we actually put it elsewhere? We could actually technically grab this node instead if we can't afford this 6 over here, by throwing that away, we get to 403, which is still over the 4.0 threshold, so it is still fine, and that saves us quite a bit of currency to go for 35% effect on 5 passives instead of 6 passives. Just the base, instead of being 30 exalt, is like 2 or 3 exalts or so. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper because it's not considered endgame. You can just alt spam or chaos spam or all, probably not chaos spam with the current price of exalts, but spam scours and alchemies until you get just the 35 with literally anything else, and you're good to go. This jewel did not change whatsoever. It's still a 5 passive with First Among and Pure Guile. And the last one is a 6 passive with 35% effect. And that being said, if we drop an extra one of these nodes, unfortunately, we are going to be under the threshold. So it is going to require you guys to spend a little bit of currency, or, you know, a decent amount of currency to get these 6 passives, 6% area of 6% effective non-curse aura from your skills. Now, if you wanted to self-farm these, you could easily do T17 Tropical Islands with the 16 Chaos Xanamod, and you'll get one of these, you know, every day, every other day, depending on how much you play. They're not that insanely rare, and you can self-farm them again. The next thing that changed, though, is that we had to swap our 7 voices to 5 passive voices. Now, this is fairly expensive, but again, since we are upgrading the budget, we are upgrading the build, everything is being upgraded. Now, all these upgraded, which I'm talking about, are all just to reach this 4.0 threshold. Realistically, it is not required to get the 4.0 threshold. We could easily deal with 7 stat voices and, you know, just less aura effect, and the build would not be scuffed or broken or anything. You would just have less aura effect, but you would save tons and tons of currency by doing so. So it's up to you if you want to invest the required currency to reach that 4.0 threshold, but I would highly recommend it if you can afford it. Now, that's all that changed on the tree. Let's go ahead and look at the skills, because that changed as well a little bit. The alternate purities, we are running alternate purity of ice, alternate purity of elements, alongside enhance in our Alpha's Howl, which didn't change in terms of the helmet enchant or anything. But the big change here is that we are getting Divergent Val Haste. It is very important that you get the Val version. If you can't afford the Divergent Val Haste, just buy a regular Val Haste. The only reason why Divergent is really good is because it gives you 10% prod speed. Now, once you actually pair that up with Enhance, it becomes 22% prod speed, or so. Yeah, 22% prod speed, and this actually gets multiplied by your aura effect, which in this case, if you're getting 20% on a 4.0 build, you are getting 80% prod speed for your spark, and that is really insane for your clear speed and for your single target damage, especially in enclosed area, because the same spark can hit the same target multiple times given that it has enough travel distance. That being said, there is a maximum travel distance to spark, which is why there's no reason to invest any more into prod speed than just this, and the quality on the gems should be more than enough. Your sparks are going to be going crazy fast. In the Prism Guardian, nothing really changed, except that we are going to be using Malevolence, and this is only for the skill effect duration. If you can afford it, go with the Anomalous version, otherwise just go with the regular version. But the Anomalous version gives you an extra 10% skill effect duration, which brings it to 30% skill effect duration. And that is what is going to make your spark last a really long time. And again, the longer the spark lasts, the faster it moves, the more it can hit enemies. And since we are using fork, whenever one of our spark hits something, it'll fork into 2 projectiles, and that is when you get a full screen, literally a full screen of spark everywhere, and the damage becomes insane. In our gloves, we are going to be using Zealotry, Blood Magic, Precision, Purity of Fire, so nothing changed there. In a weapon, we're still using Leap Slam and Smite. Now we can go faster attacks if we want to for Leap Slam, but we could also go Fortify for the defensive properties. That's up to you. The boots are going to be changed. I'll go over the Dorianis in a second, but in terms of links, nothing really changed. Clarity, Discipline, Righteous Fire, and Grace. We do use a lot of people ask me that if I use the actual Grace or if I use only the Val Grace portion of Grace. I actually use the actual Grace because it gives us so much chance to evade. It makes us quite a bit tankier. The Spark setup in terms of links is going to be Spark alongside Spell Echo, Inspiration, Controlled Destruction, Arcane Surge, and Fork. Now, I would highly recommend going with Awakened Fork because it is quite a bit better than the regular fork, and it's not that expensive if you can afford it. You could always go with Awakened Spell Echo, but that is very expensive. And for the inspiration, you could go with the Divergent if you're having issues with mana, or Anomalous for a little bit more crit chance, but it's not that big of a deal. Purity of Lightning is now going to come from her boots, which allows us to run Malevolence because we could not run Malevolence beforehand, and now we can through the use of the fact that we are going to use Doriani's Delusion, which gives us level 25 Purity of Lightning. Now, if you pay attention, you'll see that at the bottom of the screen there is 90 all resistance, 49 chaos resistance, and 90% physical damage reduction, with a bunch of block, movement speed, evasion, and all that good stuff. The damage is 23.6 or so million Cyrus DPS, so our actual mapping DPS is more around the 34 million, which is enough to do basically everything in the game, just shy of very, very deep delving. But this build can even take you around to 1k or maybe 1.5k in delve, so not horrible there. After that, you're going to start having issues with damage. Now, that is basically it for all that change. Now, of course, there is going to be some price associated to just about every single one of those changes. But considering the last video was a while ago, hopefully you guys had time to farm currency to afford all of these upgrades. The next video is going to be the pure endgame, at least my version of my ore stacker, which I built to actually be able to delve past 2,000, 3,000, potentially even 3,000. We'll see when we get there. So if you're interested in seeing that build, which is completely broken and very, very expensive, stay tuned. On that note, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. And before I go, I want to say a huge thank you to my supporters: Mario, Luro, Gaikona, Kfish, Dr. Radu, Scott, Zarashi, Kevin, Casticus, Brandon, and Dan S., as well as anybody else who wishes to remain anonymous, and of course, anybody else who has supported me in the past or through different platforms. Love you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.